have it and you have it to go back and see what we have said. Let's start off with the Guru Gayatri. Tadparamparya Bhidmahe Jnanalingeshwaraya Dhimahi Tanno Guruh Prachodayate Om Yoga Maharishi Dr. Swami Geetananda Giri Guru Maharaj Ki Jai. We have been having a look at the concepts of what is Adhikara Yoga as the base, the foundation, that Adi as the root source as well as the highest, that causal layer to which we are trying to retrace our way back. We have looked at the concepts of an outline where the Yoga Anga, the limbs of yoga, where they are set by Maharishi Patanjali. We have seen that these are universal vows. Sarvabhauma Mahavratam is how Patanjali has termed them. Sarvabhauma Mahavratam, and just so that you have a reference to context, he says that in the 31st Sutra of the Sadhana Pada, and that Sarvabhauma Mahavratam, the universal vows that are beyond any divisions, beyond any excuses. We have seen the importance of Pratipaksha Bhavanam, how Pratipaksha Bhavanam is an actual tool through which we can work on the Yama Niyama. Because the Yama Niyama start to become very gray at many places. It is not black and white. It is not easy to find out whether you are right or wrong. And that is why there's a lot of gray. In one of his books, Georg Feuerstein, he had used a term. He called it twilight language. He uses the term twilight language for many of the yogic concepts. He says that these terms are belonging to twilight language, so they are not day or night. It means that you have to use a lot of discernment in trying to understand what is being said in the yogic scriptures. And what has happened is people who have translated them have been linguistic experts, not subject experts, and hence have made a lot of literal translation. This morning in my 103rd session, was it 103? Yeah, it is 103 already. We were talking about this in a different way because we talked about what is called the prana vayus. The prana vayu, the upa prana vayu, and the para prana vayu, the 12 flows of energy, and how the first 5 are to do with our functional existence. Your respiration, your digestion, your elimination, all of these are taken care of by the first 5, your reflexes by the next 5, and the highest 2 called para prana vayu that Swamiji talks about enable a neurochemical reaction in your nervous system, in your brain, to become a thought. And that is called the Chitra Pranavayu. Like you are putting the paint and the brush, all the material stuff, and suddenly a work of art comes alive. Similarly, all the neurons firing and the neuropeptides being released, and suddenly you have this great thought. From Annamaya, Pranamaya level, it has jumped up to Manomaya level. That step-up transformation from the physical, physiological to the psychological requires an energy which is called Chitra Pranavayu, and the step-down transformer, where out of thin air, from thin air, we pluck out a thought. A universal thought is plucked out, and suddenly we have the thought out of nowhere. That is done by an energy called Akasha Pranavayu. So Chitra Pranavayu, Akasha Pranavayu. Now why I'm putting this here is so that you will all go and watch that video if you have not. Put a like there and share it. Okay? That is Ananda's self-promotion. Seriously, I don't care. The truth is I don't care actually. I care so much that I don't care whether people share it or not. That's their business. Once I have shared it, it's done. Once I have made a video, it's done. Once I made a book, it's done. It's out there. It's not mine anymore. Right? So whether people like it or not, share it or not, buy it or not, that's their business, not mine. Anyway, coming back, the reason I'm talking about it is this word Vayu has been so wrongly translated. So wrongly translated as AIR, air, wind. And the reason is the word Vayu means wind. It means air. So the linguistic expert, they found this term, Pranavayu. Oh, they said there must be wind inside you. These guys, because they were not subject experts, did not understand the energy flows are being described poetically in a metaphoric language as the wind flowing, that the energy is flowing like the wind. It was a metaphor, a poetic metaphor. And because these guys had no idea what they were talking about, they found the word Vayu, they said, oh, the major air and the minor air. Major airs, plural, AIRS. The Pranavayus are translated, you go and look at so many translations out there. The Pranavayus are translated as major airs and minor airs. I'll tell you that much. And you are like, this is interesting. We knew we were a big windbag, but we never knew we were such a big windbag. And a lot of hot air balloons running around on this planet, especially in politics. You never knew you had so much of wind in you, okay? Anybody who teaches Hatha Yoga and does the Pavana Muktasana has the series of stories of wind coming out different ends. And that's why you have to be very careful teaching these practices. They really work. The Pavan is really Mukta. I don't know whether people get Mukti or not, but the Pavan gets Mukta for sure in Pavana Muktasana. It's quite astonishing, I tell you, what happens. Yoga classes can be hilarious at times if you have a good sense of humor. Don't take yourself too seriously. That's the message. If you take yourself too seriously, you're already dead. It's only the dead bodies that are dead serious. If you're living, you should not be dead serious. You should be life joyous, not dead serious. Life joyous, not dead serious. Anyway, so they translate it as the air. And so people are going around, there's a pranavayu called Vyana. This Vyana is a pranavayu that is responsible for the energy moving throughout your body. It is the energy of circulation and the neuronal conduction, the conduction of sensory motor impulses in your nervous system throughout your body is governed by the Vyana Pranavayu, V-Y-A-N-A, Vyana. It is said Vyana Sarva Shariragaha, the Vyana is all over the body. And so these people translate it as you have wind in your toes. The wind in your toes. Just think how stupid that sounds. And so, you have these people trying to talk to medical doctors and scientists and say, the wind in your toes. Now, after that, these guys are not going to take you seriously with yoga at all. I'll tell you that much. If you run around telling people you have wind in your toes. Wind in your nose is there, but wind in your toes doesn't really exist in that way. Now we are enhancing the wind in your toes. What they meant was the energy flow in the peripheries. Now, if you say the energy flow in the peripheries, that enhances the peripheral circulation and reduces the peripheral pressure, which is part of your diastolic pressure influence. And by doing that, you are reducing the peripheral pressure. Your diastolic pressure is going down. There is enhanced peripheral tissue perfusion. People are going to say, okay, that sounds good to me. But if you say we are working on the wind in your toes, it sounds a bit weird. There's a lot of issue with this translation. I tell you, one of the biggest difficulties is the translation. So when we come to these terms here, we are working with terms that we have to think about in many, many ways. And that is why twilight language, as Georg Feuerstein has told us. And I tell you, I love him for some of these very, very important insights he's given. He's given some very amazing insights into this, and really, really we need to understand. Don't just take it literally. Re-evaluate these terms and try to re-understand them. Re-understand them. As someone said the other day, looks like I have a lot of unlearning to do while I'm learning with you. I said, welcome to the club. Welcome to the club, because we all have a lot of unlearning to do. Because that's what I'm going to talk about when we talk about Satya today. Our prejudices. Our prejudices that prevent us from perceiving that which is the reality. When we talk about the prejudices that are there, where do these prejudices come from? Again, the kleshas. So when in doubt, blame it on the kleshas. Okay? When in doubt, blame it on the kleshas. And these kleshas, they are already based on ignorance. What type of ignorance? That type of ignorance that thinks you know it all. You know, the people who go around saying, I know it all, most probably they know nothing. The more you know, the more you realize what you don't know. And that is why the wisest people I have met have been people who have had the humility to know that they don't know. Because with wisdom comes the awakening that there is so much yet to be known. Such a beautiful state of being. Such a beautiful state of being. The kleshas are based on ignorance, which is confused knowing. I'm giving you a new term for avidya. Avidya is not knowing. Avidya is not knowing, but it is confused knowing. It is misconceived knowing. Because what is happening is, you think you know it, but actually you don't. But you are sure, so sure you know it, that you will not realize you don't know it. It is like I once had a big argument with a friend of mine who couldn't understand why the day we were born was not called our first birthday. It was a big struggle. I said, the first birthday is at the end of the first year. He said, no, that's your second birthday. You were born on your birthday, so that should have been your first birthday. So 1 year later should be your second birthday. I tell you, 3 days of discussion, and we ended up saying, you believe what you want to believe and I believe what I want to believe. 3 days. I still remember one of my colleagues in the hospital who had made a mistake with accounting. And in fact, he out of his pocket had given us extra money. And I sat trying to explain to him how he had actually made a wrong account, and he was giving back money which was his and not really our money. And he couldn't understand. It took me 3 hours. At the end of it, I said, okay, you don't deserve to have your money, give it. At the end of it, there was just no, I was trying to help him understand he was losing money, and if he couldn't understand he was losing money, I don't know what I can do. 3 hours. Because he was so clear that, in his mind, he was clear that, yes, I know I am correct. And then after that, there's no changing. This is why ignorance can be tackled. Arrogant ignorance cannot be tackled. You can deal with ignorance which wants to come out of ignorance, but arrogant ignorance says, I am right. And in Tamil, here we have a statement, we say, Na pudicha moyalukku moonu kaadu. That is, the rabbit that I have caught has only 3 legs, not 4 legs. And it is apparent the rabbit has 4 legs, but this person says the rabbit I have caught has only 3 legs. And despite all your efforts to tell them it has 4 legs, they will not accept it. Now, this is a very difficult ignorance to deal with. And that is what avidya is. It is the people who are so sure about themselves that you cannot even try to give them another perspective. And it is a very difficult place to be. So when we talk about Satya, it is going to be very difficult with Satya, because whose version of Satya? You remember last time I talked about history? His story and her story. We are going to look a bit at that in a few moments, because it is quite a struggle. I think, in fact, we'll go first into that. This is on page 6 of the Living the Yama Niyama handout. Hopefully, I should be able to share the screen. Okay. Can you all see a screen there? Good. So the file is open. This time I've kept the file open. Page 6 is where we are. Yes. And we are going to have a little look at this. I'll expand it a bit more. Yeah. We have talked about ahimsa, so I'm not going to do that. Okay. This statement is a good one. It is sort of the link between ahimsa and satya. What do we human beings normally do? We listen to 10%, we understand or misunderstand 50%, and then we react 100%. I think this is a major issue in so many discussions that it actually is worth keeping in mind. The second of the yama is satya, or truthfulness, a steadfast adherence to reality as it is, knowing, understanding, speaking and maintaining the truth may be the most difficult task for an individual. And we give up thinking it is not possible, but in fact it is if we take it up as a challenge. Many have lived a life of truth. They have struggled despite the hardship. Now, with this in mind, I want to give you an example. The first war of Indian independence. As you know, the British ruled India for a long time. And in 1947, left India, and India got independence. But the struggle for independence started in 1857. And we in India call it the first war of Indian independence. That is what our kids learn in history books. But that in the British side as the Sepoy Mutiny. It is very interesting that the British version is the Sepoy Mutiny of 1857. The Indian version is the first war of Indian independence. In fact, I remember one of my students who was living in France, and her daughter at one point had to leave France and go to the UK to live with her grandparents. And so this girl who had studied up to a certain grade in France now had to go to England and continue her studies. And she wrote back to her mother. She said, "Mom, in the French books of history, I learned all this perspective about the how the French were the winners and they did all this good and the British were the villains. And she says, now I'm getting this other perspective of history where the French are the villains and the English are the good guys. Which version should I believe, Ma? And it was an amazing story. And that kid, because the kid was a small kid, could understand what was happening. Because each person had their own perspective of it. And so their version had that story. So the question comes, who is right, who is wrong? And we have to understand it is a matter of perspective. And that is why I always remind people, history is written by the victors. Any given incident can be represented in many different ways according to the person relating it. It depends on whether they are the affected party, an onlooker, or if they are reporting it based on hearsay. No wonder there are usually so many versions of any event in the world. And nowadays with social media, you have even more versions. Everybody has their own version and it's astonishing. We talk about and we discuss so many celebrities. In India, cricket is the most popular religion. So Sachin Tendulkar, Dhoni, these are our cricket stars. But you could replace it with any of your sporting stars of any part of the world, or movie stars. In India, it's Amitabh or Kamal Hassan. We talk about these celebrities. We form opinions about them as if we have been with them or seen them from close quarters. But in reality, all that we know about them is what we have been fed through magazines, periodicals, websites, social media. And we form an opinion about someone without even knowing anything, let alone the actual reality about them. The actual truth can be analyzed only and only if the reality is known. And that too after it has been analyzed from various aspects and angles with a 360-degree perspective. Do we ever have that? And yet we think, I know the truth. My version is the truth. And we kill each other over it. I think one of the big dilemmas you have as you grow as a human being is you start to see there are many perspectives. And once you see that, you cannot actually fight with anyone. I remember as a small kid in school having this ability. This ability becomes a disability at times. This ability becomes a disability because I could never take part and win any debate. I could never take part and win any debate because I could see perfectly why their arguments were as good as mine. So when you can see the other side's perspective and you can see how their arguments are as good as yours, where is the debate? The debate can only occur when I say, I am right and you are wrong. Yes, we can debate it. But when I say, yes, you are also right, I'm also right, there's no debate. But this has been a saving grace in life, I'll tell you, because you start to realize you don't have to take sides. You don't have to take sides at all. We are always caught in taking sides. I had a friend in medical school. This was a Sardaji. And in India, these are the great people, amazing people, the most brave-hearted, large-hearted people. Yet, all the Indian jokes are about these people. They are like the butt of all the jokes. It's like all the blonde jokes that you hear, the blonde girls being the butt of it. The Indian Sardajis are always the butt of our jokes. It's very nasty. And we had quite a few Sardajis in medical school with me. Very dear people, and they will go out of the way to help you. If you are ever hungry in any part of the world, go to a Sikh Gurudwara, they'll give you food. And the sense of seva, service is so strong in that community. Amazing people, I tell you, large-hearted, brave-hearted people. And this friend of mine, Surinder Pal Singh, SP Singh, when we were in our hostel, we would have had at least 300, if not more of us staying together. First year students, second year students, third year, everybody. And depending on your seniority, you went up the floor. So the juniors, the newcomers were on the ground floor and the seniors were on the top floor. They had the penthouse view. The usual story of hierarchy in medical school. Yes. So you knew who you were based on which floor you were on. By the time I got to final year, I was back on ground floor because I was put in charge of anti-ragging squad. So I had to prevent the ragging that would happen of the freshers. And so I came and I had a room on the ground floor along with the fresh students so that we could prevent it. I have my own stories on that. That is why both in school and in college, some of my dearest friends were 5 or 6 years younger than me because, I was taking care of them and beautiful relationships. But in this hostel, which had 300 plus people, every day there would be a fist fight. Every day. These are guys training to be doctors, okay? But every day there'll be a fist fight. And someone punching somebody else and going on. And every day, whenever there would be a fist fight on any of the floors, my dear SP Singh would just go straight into it and start punching somebody. And at the end of the fight, I used to ask him, I said, SP, do you have any idea who was right or wrong there that you jumped in and started punching each other? He would say, Ananda, we are like this. He used to tell me, he himself told me, he said, Ananda, we are like this. What we do is that if something is happening, we first do and then we think. That is an admission from SP Singh to me. He said, Ananda, we go and do and then we think about what we are doing. And I tell you, to me, he was one of the wisest people I knew because he realized what was happening. Now, he couldn't stop himself. That's the problem. The problem was he knew it. He couldn't stop it. This reminds me of another very important complex. I have all of these complexes I have created, syndromes and complexes. I told you about the mal-identification syndrome, where we have identified with all that is not real. Avidya, mal-identification syndrome. Like that, I have all these syndromes and complexes I talk about. This is the Duryodhana complex. Duryodhana was the villain of the Mahabharata. And many people in yoga circles, they don't realize Mahabharata and Ramayana have a lot of yoga teachings. And people often don't realize the depth of the yoga teachings in the Mahabharata, Ramayana. And they think that, oh, those are just religious books or things like that. They have a lot of yoga teachings in them. In the Mahabharata, the villain of the Mahabharata, the eldest of the bad guys, the 100 bad guys, the Kauravas, is Duryodhana. And Duryodhana is visited by Krishna at one time. Now, Krishna was a cousin to all of these guys. They were all relatives. It's all a big fight between relatives if you look at it. And Krishna and Duryodhana were having a discussion about Duryodhana being so bad, always doing things wrong and always creating problems. And so Krishna is talking to Duryodhana, and Krishna says, Duryodhana, don't you realize what you are doing is bad? What you are doing is evil. What you are doing is negative. And Duryodhana gives a very wise answer to Krishna. He gives a very wise answer. He says, Krishna, I know what is wrong. I know what is wrong. I cannot stop myself from doing it. I know what is wrong. I cannot stop myself from doing it. I know what is right. I cannot bring myself to do it. Amazing wisdom in Duryodhana. We just paint him as the villain. I tell you, the intensity of wisdom that is in that guy in a different way is also there. I know what is wrong. I cannot stop myself from doing it. I know what is right. I cannot bring myself to do it. And then comes his punchline. Krishna, you are the divine consciousness that is there in everybody. So you must be in me also. So if I am like this, it is your fault, Krishna. I love this dialogue from the Mahabharata between Krishna and Duryodhana. I know what is wrong. I cannot bring myself to do it. I know what is right. No, I know what is wrong. I cannot stop myself from doing it. I know what is right. I cannot bring myself to do it. And you, Krishna, are the cosmic consciousness that is in everyone, including me. So if I am like this, it must be your fault. Duryodhana complex, I call this. This is the Duryodhana complex, and it typifies us modern human beings. We know what is right. We cannot bring ourselves to do it. We know what is wrong. We cannot stop ourselves from doing it. And yet we find somebody to blame. I've often thought about it. What is wrong, do not do it. That is what the Yama is telling us. Those things that are subhuman, do not do them. Big no. Those that are right, do them. The big yes is the Niyama. That is where the change of the attitude has to come. We have to outgrow the Duryodhana complex, and we have to stop blaming somebody else. We have to say, the buck stops here. Yeah? Once upon a time, America had a president who said that. The buck stops here. He had a board, a small thing played on his desk that said that buck stops here. Can we take responsibility for our own life? That's why yoga starts, when you start to take responsibility. That is why the sixth, the Ajna, is the responsibility, the choice. You know, I had an opportunity to be at an event that was a yoga conference where the chief guest was the Justice of Maharashtra, one of the big judges in Maharashtra legal circles. It was at Kaivalyadama, and Subodh, my dear Subodh, he is a lawyer by training, so he has all the legal connections with all the judges and also invites them to the events. And this judge gave such a beautiful talk on yoga, actually. And he talked about dealing with issues between husbands and wives. At one time of his life, that he was in charge of courts that were dealing with trying to find out, marriage issues. And that he would go home and his wife would tell him, why do you guys take so long to find out what is right or wrong? Isn't it apparent? You just have to listen to both sides and you know what is right and what is wrong. And he said, that is the problem. He said, neither is totally right or totally wrong. And he said, that is why we struggle to find where it is. And that is where this diagram of mine came. You can see it on the screen, I hope. One version of the truth and the other version of the truth. These are two people with each of their versions. The Venn diagram is a very good way for us to learn. Remember the yoga therapy Venn diagram? Yoga is the big circle. Yoga therapy is the small circle in yoga. Yes. Here, one version of the truth, the other version of the truth, and the truth lies someplace in between both. And this is actually the struggle we have in life, because when we are trying to focus on Satya, it is very, very difficult. That is why when the case is being argued, the judge forms an opinion after hearing the same incident described by both parties. Often other witnesses are called, because the judge needs to find the truth as applicable in the version related by each of them and finally zero in on what is the actual truth. This requires a great power of analysis, discernment, and the application of a greater, wider perspective before they can announce the final judgment. And then that judgment is challenged in the higher court, who finds that they were wrong. And yet, we hear something, we see something on social media and we say, yeah, that is a bad person. We have no idea what that person's like. I've had a few people in my life like that who have never met me, never attended a single class, never met me, never talked to me, and yet decided, I was whatever they wanted me to be. And you'll have a lot of those people in your lives also. And the more A celebrity you become, the more those are going to be there, because they're not going to know you. People who know you, they know what you are, but people who don't know you, it becomes very difficult. This is why when we talk about this, I wanted to share with you something. And it is going to be a PowerPoint, which I prepared and I use to give a talk to the medical students when they join our university. And often I am one of the first people who gives them a talk, because they have an orientation program and yoga is part of it. So before we give them the practices, we give them an introduction to yoga, the yogic perspective. And so what I thought about it is, rather than just give them a talk on, this is what yoga is, try to help them understand the perspective of becoming a medical professional to help others. And so often it is a bit of a motivational talk. And I like to give them what I'm going to show you, because it is a very, very useful one to understand where we get stuck. And it is a PowerPoint called Perspective is All. And it's out there on SlideShare. And let's see, can I get it going? Okay, yeah. Can you see my screen? Okay. So it is entitled Perspective is All, a compilation. It is not original to me, so I call it a compilation. And the very first statement is a statement worth contemplating and meditating. Everything we see is a perspective, not the truth. Because we sort of have in our head that what we see is the truth, but actually it is a perspective. And when we have the humility to understand what we see is a perspective, then we can grow, because we can have a bit more come into us. Now, the very old story, seeing a cup, a glass is half full or half empty, optimist, pessimist, and then people have the jokes about, the practical minded person who adds ice cubes and a bit of whiskey to it and drinks it, and you have all these views. But sometime back, the Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, who actually has been the one to really give yoga its pride of place in many ways, he made a statement. He said that the glass is never half empty or half full. It is always completely full. Because he said it is half filled with water, half filled with air. And I think it is a very important, a new perspective, because this is the Indian concept that everything is wholesome, holistic. And that is why you do not look at it in a piecemeal way, but you look at the bigger picture, which you have otherwise missed. And I think it is very important to have multiple perspectives. Multiple perspectives enhance our perspective, basically. And depending on where we are in the world, each one of us is going to perceive the world differently. Even right now, for some of you, it is night. For some of you, it is day. For some of you, it is the morning. Some of you, it is the evening. And it's all at the same time. In fact, some of you are up at 4 a.m. and those down under, it must be what, about 9:30 at night. So we have a range from 4 a.m. in the morning to 9:30 at night. And here I am, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Kalavati is looking at a clock to check that it's about 1 o'clock, I think, where she is. And we are all right. So if I say, what is the time? I think it would be worth it. You could just type it in the chat box and see what time it is for each person. We would have this entire set that the present moment, what is it right now? Let's just see for a second as that came up. 7:30, 7:40, 12:40, 5:30, 12:45, 9, 5, 7, 12, 9, 12, 11, 1:47, 12:45, 4:43, 5:43. You just see that suddenly you have this entire variation going on here from such a wide range of timing. And yet, if someone were to say, what is the time right now? Your version is also correct. My version is also correct. Everyone's version is correct. So it doesn't mean that only Kalavati is correct when she says it's her time, or only Bernadette is correct, or Divya is correct, or I am correct. This is something we need to understand, because if we don't understand the context, which is why we need to say 4 a.m. in this part of the world, 9:30 in this part of the world, 5 p.m. in this part of the world, then we have put it in context. But we are not putting anything in context. We are just looking at it in isolated bits and pieces of information and killing each other over the fact that I am right and you are wrong. Well, at the same time, all of us are right. I think this is just amazing, actually, when you think about it. The range of timing that is there, and all of us are right now in the same place at the same time. I think this is a very important teaching that has happened just right now, because this is what life is all about. Just as each of us is in a different part of the world, everybody is in different stages of their own evolutionary journey. And each person's perspective is going to be different based on their own evolutionary journey. And then how do we say one perspective is correct and one is not? I think this is where we need to understand, so important. And yes, Megan, that's a beautiful answer. It is now. That is such a beautiful answer. And that is why Patanjali doesn't talk about yesterday or tomorrow. He talks about now. And that is why yoga, Atha Yoga Anushasanam, yoga has to manifest in the present moment. And the present moment cannot be quantified. The present moment cannot be quantified. It is a qualitative experience. The moment you start quantifying it, we start fighting. Because you say, my version of the present moment is different than yours. Because you have quantified it. Time is a quantification of the present moment. And that is why the secret is to become timeless. How do you become timeless? By becoming timeful, which means you're filled with time. Every moment is the now. And you transcend time and you become timeless. That is why the message, Purnamada Purnamidam, through that wholesomeness, you transcend everything. Anyway, continuing with the slide share. I have never talked about this to the medical students, so you got an additional bit out of me because of different time zones. I couldn't do it in the same class, 250 medical students sitting in front of me. If I say, what's the time? They're all going to say the same time. It will not work. So you see, the teaching couldn't work there, but it can work here. Isn't that beautiful? The same teaching, it works in a different context. Okay, this is a beautiful one from 101 Dalmatians. 101 Dalmatians were at the end. This couple is so happy. I'm so glad it all worked out and we can keep the 101 Dalmatians for ourselves. They are in heaven and the neighbors are like, it smells like, you know what, and they haven't started barking for 3 days. That's it. I'm going over there and saying something. The same experience, 101 Dalmatians for this couple, they are in heaven and the other, they are in hell. Isn't this the story of so many neighborhoods? That is why the Christ said, love thy neighbor like yourself. They must have had a lot of problems with neighbors even in those days. But whenever I find our, ancient literature saying things like this, I realize they have had the same problem we have had. Aishwarya and Radu have recently gone through something also, right? Plumbing cleanout. And each will have their own perspective. We had it last month with our neighbors in town. We had that issue with plumbing issue. So I know that. This is a classic one, Pavlov. We all know about Pavlovian conditioning and what Pavlov did was he used to ring a bell and ring this bell and then feed the dog. And then, he found that the gastric secretion dependent on ringing the bell, not feeding. And this is the dog's perspective of the whole experiment. Watch what I can do. Huh? I can make Pavlov, as soon as I drool, he will smile and write in his little book. I think it's such a beautiful perspective. Isn't that amazing? Huh? Pavlov he thought he was doing the experiment on the dog. The dog was doing its version of the experiment on Pavlov. And so the dog world has its own, it's called some doggy, the dog wins over Pavlov in conditioning or something like that. That's their version of this experiment. I just love these type of things. I tell you seriously, if you look on the net, if you look out in the world, you will find these amazing teachings out there. That's why I love social media, not for all the nonsense that is shared and the hate mongering that is done. But you just find such amazing teachings out there that again enable you to see, as a scientist doing your experiment, you think you are experimenting on something. You don't know that thing is doing its experiment on you. The Heisenberg principle is based on that. That when you observe something, you change it even by observing it. Now imagine all the creepy crawlies on this planet and them observing us. Imagine what it does to us. It's not just humans. Another very beautiful concept. This is all part of the concept of Satya, trying to understand what is this truth that we are trying to follow in the Yama. If you look at this, this is the image, the object, and if an orange light is shown on it from here, you end up with a square with an orange halo, and a blue light from here becomes a dark circle with a blue halo. And people who are sitting here are going to perceive this and say, this is the truth. People here are going to say, this is the truth. And actually, you know what? This is the truth. It is not either this or that, because it's something else. But what has happened based on where we are, again, where we are physically, mentally, emotionally, socially, spiritually, we are going to have a different perspective. And that perspective will be so dependent on where we are. This is the old one, the elephant and the blind man. I love this because for me, when I think of the world of yoga and yoga therapy, when I think of the world of yoga and yoga therapy, this is absolutely what comes to mind. This is exactly what comes to mind when I think of the world of yoga and yoga therapy, because everybody's caught up with their part. And we are all missing the whole picture. Someone who's at the tusk it's a spear, the trunk is a snake, the legs are a tree, the body is a wall, the ears are a fan, the tail is a rope. And so this is what yoga is. This is what yoga therapy is. And we define it. We put it in a box. And we say, this is my definition. I tell you seriously, we are all so limited because each one of us is perceiving only one component. We are not able, unless we expand our perspective, we cannot see the whole. And this is why when we want to actually understand something, there's no way we can do it if we are locked in one perspective. We can never do it. It could be cultural perspective, religious perspective, genetic perspective, social perspective. It could be anything. As long as we are able to see the bigger picture. This is why we need to come out of those walls. We need to come out of the boxes. And this is why I always tell the young children, people need to travel. They need to meet other people. They need to meet other people and see other people think differently, eat differently, dress differently, walk differently, talk differently, and yet we are all one and the same. The more you expand it, you realize there are infinite variations of life. But otherwise, you think that only my version is correct. I tell you seriously, such a mess we have made because of that. Again, this is an interesting one with the 6 and the 9. Last class, when I sent you out the recording, I had a classic example of this when one of you sent me back an email and said, the password is not working for the recording. And I said, I'm sure the password is working because it is generated automatically by Zoom, not by me. So I can make a mistake, but Zoom is an automated system. I'm sure it's not a mistake. And the reason was the password started with what looked like OM. And so the person naturally thought Dr. Ananda has sent it. He must have put a password starting with OM. But actually, it was not an O, it was a 0. It was 0M, capital M, 0 with a capital M. And that was a beautiful teaching moment to me, because I said, because we are thinking, oh, it is Ananda, oh, it is yoga, oh, it is spiritual, it is Yama Niyama. So the password must be OM. See, because what has happened is we have come from a preconceived bias that the 0 was not seen as a 0, it was seen as an O. And this is why whenever I get these, sign in passwords and all, I have a problem with the O and the 0. You have to be very careful to know the difference there. The 6 and the 9 are a common issue with this, and people kill each other over it. The other one I really love is this one. So here you have this guy marooned on a tiny island, and he's so happy he's seeing that boat. He's like, boat. And then there's this other guy in the life of Pi who's on a boat. There's no tiger there, but imagine a tiger with him. And he is like, land. The only thing is this is a bit pathetic because both of them are stuck now. The guy in the boat thought he was getting to land. The guy on land thought he was getting to the boat. And both of them have to wait for somebody else to come with something better to save them. But again, the perspective. And the best one is always the last one. Here you have the Rhino Picasso. Rhino Picasso is the greatest rhinoceros artist ever. And this guy is known for his amazing paintings of natural landscapes. And each one of them has his signature, which is the horn, the rhinoceros horn that is there. Rhino means a horn, a nose. That is why when you have a nose issue, it's called rhinitis, allergic rhinitis and all that. And this guy, every painting he does, he's out there in nature, beautiful paintings, and every one of them has that famous rhinoceros horn. It's amazing. And what I like to ask people is, what is your horn? Because in everything you see, even everything you perceive, there is this big horn that is in the middle of that whole picture. And that is basically our ego. Everything we perceive has in the middle of it this gigantic ego horn. It is just so much part of everything we see. And I tell you, the more we start to understand how our ego, and what is our ego coming from? Our ego is coming from a misconceived mal-identification syndrome of avidya. Avidya has led to asmita, which is that sense that I am different than everybody else. I am different than the universe in which I live. And hence we have this central horn that is there. We have brought our ego into everything. And unless and until we start to move that away from the perspective, we will never see things as they are. We'll see things as we are. And all our load of klesha, our likes and dislikes, they influence what we see. This is one of the most amazing cartoons I ever picked up off the internet. And I tell you seriously, such a life teaching in this image. Now, as someone who also is a scientist, I must tell you, this picture is factually wrong. Because a rhinoceros does not see its horn. That is the actual truth. The fact is, the rhinoceros does not see its horn because its eyes are placed in a way that It brings an image together without the horn coming in the middle. It is like you close one eye, you can see your nose. You close the other eye, you can see the nose. But then you open both eyes, now you don't see your nose. Your nose is there. But what has happened is when you bring both eyes together, you don't see it unless you focus on it. Yes, Laura, you are focusing on your nose, now you will see it. Huh? But otherwise, your nose is constantly in other people's business. All about, not Laura. I was telling because you're looking at your nose and you're so close, I could pick you out. Our nose is constantly in other people's business. But the thing is, we don't know our nose is there. Because what has happened, it is God has put nature, artificial, intelligent design, whatever it may be, has put our eyes in such a way that when both the eyes, the images come together, we take out the constant, which is the nose that is constantly there. And hence we don't see our nose, though it is always there. Our nose is always nosing around in other people's business and in our perspective. So we have to get our nose out of other people's lives. Seriously, I tell you. That nose, we talk about it. We say, don't poke your nose in my business or in my life. We talk, it's an English expression. Don't poke your nose in my life or in my business. We do that. And we talk about people who are very nosy, for constantly poking the nose in other people's stuff. What does it mean? It means that you are bringing your perspective into it. You are bringing that big you into it. It is such an amazing thing. I tell you, whenever I look at these things and see, every movie I watch, I find something in it. Every book I read, I find something in it. Every person I meet, I find something there. Every place I go, I find something, because I'm constantly trying to see what is it that is warping my perspective. What is it that is warping my perspective? Because if I know my perspective is not the actual perspective, how can I criticize somebody else's perspective? It is so important that we realize we have to expand the perspective. And that is why the Indian culture has the ethos. Because this is another way to look at it. This is another image. The whole truth is there, and my truth and your truth. And the truth is actually, there was the other diagram which had this person's truth, that person, and you had the Venn diagram. Another type of Venn diagram where there's this whole truth, and then each has their own perspective. This is the iti. You are also correct, I am also correct, but there's something bigger than both of us. It's an encompassing one. Whereas the other one was sort of saying your version, my version, and the actual reality. And that is why your story, my story, the truth may be in a different direction for all we know. So one is, it could be all encompassing. Second, it could be something totally different than what both of us are doing, like that red, that orange, and that blue image we saw. And that is why in the Vedas it tells us, truth is one, ekam sat, vipra bahuda vadanti. The truth is one, people describe it variously. It's a very, very open-minded statement that there are multiple perspectives of the same thing. Let us not limit ourselves. Let us not say only my version is correct. And again, Ano Badra Kritabo Yanto Vishwataha from the Rig Veda that says, let noble thoughts come to us from everywhere. This is the cultural ethos. People have lost track of this. Even in India, it is pathetic that we have lost track of these concepts and we are caught in small boxes. Every part of India thinks that it is the best one and that everybody else is a fool. Every part, that is why in India we said unity in diversity. Unity in diversity is the key. But people are busy finding diversity in unity. That is a common political means, divide and rule. When you can start to find unity in diversity, that is the message of the Vedic culture of India. That is what, for me, when I say India, that's the India I'm talking about. Not the modern political, India, which is, as bad or as good as any other part of the world with its own issues. A cultural ethos that can understand that, yes, you have as much right to having your perspective as I have to mine, and let's respect each other's perspective. Nowadays, it's a very big issue. If you say, this is my perspective, and somebody doesn't like it, they're going to hunt you down for it. Especially if you're a celebrity. You'll be in deep trouble, I tell you. So people try to be politically correct. This political correctness is not truth. Please understand, political correctness is not truth. It can never be truth. It's another form of escapism. Political correctness is another form of escapism. It is not the truth. And here we come to another very important concept in Indian culture that says, speak the truth. Satyam vada. A beautiful Satyam vada, dharmam shara, that's one concept. And then there's another. I'm just seeing on what page it is. It is on page 8 of the Living, the Yama Niyama. And it says, the Vedic literature abounds with thoughts on the truth and how to express it. The Manusmriti says, Satyam vruyat, priyam vruyat, na vruyat satyam apriyam. What they basically say is that, normally translated as, speak only the truth that is pleasant to others. Do not speak the truth that might be unpleasant, and never speak untruth just to be pleasant to others. This is actually a statement that is there. Now, what happens is that people say, oh, it says, if it is unpleasant, don't say it. No, no, no. What they mean is, even the unpleasant should be spoken, but pleasantly. How can you speak the unpleasant truth in a pleasant way? Because what has happened is that we have, in our extremism, what we start to do is we say, I am going to be truthful and I'm going to tell you what a rotten idiot you are. No, that's not being truthful. That's being filled with violence. That's being a pain. And that's not what you are to be. And that is why we need to understand that each one is important. And this is usually the slide I leave the medical students with. What perspective do you choose in your life? Why do you choose it? How do you choose it? And are you open to other people's perspectives? These are the questions that usually at the end of this PowerPoint presentation, I like to ask them. What is the perspective you choose? Why do you choose it and how do you choose it? This is very important. Not that just, this is what my family said and so that's what I'm going to think. This is what my religion says, this is what I'm going to think. No, I want to know why you are choosing it. How you are choosing it as an individual. Because that is where the power of choice, being human, that superpower of being human comes into play. And often, these are the moments you start to really evaluate the choices you make in your life. And the most important one, are you open to other people's perspectives? See, I'm not saying you have to accept the perspectives, but are you open to them? I think it's very important to at least listen to the perspectives, be aware of them. And usually after this, we do a bit of the shake and we say, whooshing away the tensions and the Nasarga Mukha Bastrika, which is a beautiful thing to do. You could just shake. Let's shake our right hand. Come on. You have all been sitting for some time. Shake your right. Excellent. Now your left. Now shaking both. Shaking the head, the shoulders. A nice fast shake. Shake, 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 shake. Now catch hold of all the tensions, all the prejudices, all the negativity. And throw it out. Always feels good to do that. The second one is which we did this morning in the session where you do the spanda. Tense as much as possible and just letting go. The instant relaxation. This is one of the simplest ways to trigger the relaxation response. Is just, tense as much as possible consciously and then choose to let go. The choice of letting go is where the relaxation response is triggered. Because you have decided, I am not going to stay stressed. You have seen what being stressed is like. You say, I'm not going to do it. I choose to relax. What has happened? Prefrontal cortex has taken over. All the sub-levels, subcortical levels have been asked to keep quiet as the cortex is busy. Big boss is working, keep quiet. That is simple. We make it so complicated. It doesn't have to be complicated at all. And of course, the most important one I say is Brahma Mudra. Because when you do the Brahma Mudra, what you are doing, you are starting to open up to different perspectives. This is not just about the neck. This is about changing perspectives and understanding. There are so many other perspectives. So you are opening up to other perspectives, but all the time you are coming back to your central perspective, and your central perspective now encompasses the other perspectives. So you are going away from your perspective. For example, when I go to the right, I'm going away from my perspective, but then I'm coming back to my perspective. I am re-establishing myself in my perspective, but now that perspective includes a perspective to the right, then to the left, then up, then down. So what have I done? Consciously, I have brought in other perspectives. So my perspective has been expanded to include other perspectives. That is why Brahma Mudra is not just for the health of the neck. It's very good for the shoulders, very good. But more importantly, sensory motor functioning, because all your sensory information that feeds the brain comes through the neck, the body, the whole body, the sensory information through the neck to the brain, and all the motor commands of your brain to the body through the neck. And that is why when your neck is healthy, when that bridge is healthy, your sensory motor functioning will be appropriate. It will be responsive and not reflexive, not reactionary. So healing the neck is very important for enhanced sensory motor functioning. And you are doing a somatopsychic practice. When you do the Brahma Mudra, you are using the body to influence your mind. Using the body to influence the mind, it's a somatopsychic practice. We talk about psychosomatics all the time. Most yoga practices are somatopsychic. You are using the body to influence the way you think. You are using the body to influence the way you feel. It is an amazing concept. I always say the mechanisms of yoga are somatopsychic. The benefits are psychosomatic. I'm going to repeat that again. It's worth keeping in mind. The mechanisms of yoga are somatopsychic. When I say yoga here, I'm talking of the yoga techniques. The mechanisms of yoga techniques are somatopsychic. You are using the body, the lower part which is under your control, within your control, you are using it to influence something higher. So the mechanism is somatopsychic, but the benefit is psychosomatic. The benefit comes from the higher to the lower. You use the lower to influence the higher, and then from the higher to the lower, you have the benefits. It's like the water cycle. The water evaporates from the lakes and the rivers and the ocean and goes up, and then it comes down as rain. The rain is the psychosomatic benefits that rain into your life. The rain is the blessing that comes down. But the first that water has to go up from the water bodies, it has to evaporate and go up into the clouds. Somatopsychic mechanism, psychosomatic benefits. That's just a thought on the Brahma Mudra, which is a very useful practice. Coming back to where we were. So now, talking about, Paula, that's nice. We need to be an owl to see the perspective from the back. That's a tough one. Yes, I do accept that. It is just an amazing, amazing one. Okay, coming back to where we were. Is there a difference between truth and fact? See, fact is basically something that has been accepted by a majority. So when we say this is the fact, it is something that has been accepted by a majority. It is a democratically accepted bit of information, not necessarily the truth. And that is why facts are not necessarily the truth. This is a statement some of you will find new, because facts are what we have all accepted. Who has accepted? A committee. And how does a committee accept it? Usually by majority. Consensus only exists in theory. They write it down by consensus, which means basically 3 people didn't like it, but they didn't want to be a pain in the wrong place, so they said we'll do it by consensus. That's what most of the consensual statements mean in committees. Usually it's very different. Facts are what people have accepted. They don't have to be the truth. The truth can be something bigger. And again, the truth is a very delicate word, which is why when we talk of Satya, I like to say reality rather than truth. Because truth, we start to say half truth, quarter truth. Reality is reality. And that is why the word Sat as reality is more expansive than the word truth. Now, what do we mean by Satya? Let's come back to Satya a bit. When we talk about Satya, we are talking about a state of being which is truthfulness. So it is not just speaking the truth, but you are now established in a state of being which is truthfulness itself, reality itself. It is a very different thing than saying, I'm not going to say lies. Normally when we say Satya, we say, okay, not speaking lies is Satya. But actually it is not that. It is being established in a state of truthfulness. It is like when we talk about ahimsa, it is not enough if you say, I'm not going to have, I'm not going to, whenever I think of killing somebody, I'm going to say, I'm not going to do it. That is not ahimsa. The fact that you want to kill somebody doesn't arise in you. That is ahimsa. So ahimsa is non-violentness. Normally we translate it as non-violence. I say you have to add a ness, any s's to it. When you add a ness to it, you are talking of a state of being. Non-violentness, truthfulness, non-stealingness. I am adding that ness there. I don't know whether linguistically it is correct, but Ananda's version of linguistics is correct. And now you have my perspective. After speaking about accepting other people's perspectives. My way or no way. Sounds like gangster yogi. He came on today a bit. He was in a mellow mood, but he came on today. Yeah. We need a bit more gangster. I am going to definitely offer an online series with just gangster yogi. I am going to find a way to do that. We need more gangster anyway. It's going to, maybe it would get me assassinated, but that's a different issue. While we're talking about speaking of non-violence and truthfulness and assassination in the same statement. Gandhi was assassinated. Martin Luther King was assassinated. Okay, so think of these people who stood for this. It's for me. I think when we look at human history, we actually can learn a lot about. Well, that guy 2000 years ago who did a lot of good and they nailed him up. Yeah, Yogi, Christ the Yogi. Swamiji had no hesitation about Christ being a yogi. Issues with the church are a different issue. But Christ being a yogi for sure, yes. Christ consciousness. In fact, at one time there was an allegation that Swamiji in his bedroom at Kambli Swami Madam in the ashram had a huge cross with Jesus on the cross and that something was fishy about it. Well, what happened was one of Swamiji's students was a bishop and he felt he wanted to gift something to Swamiji and gave him this beautifully carved cross with Christ on it. It was a gift, a Guru Dakshina from a bishop who was Swamiji's yoga student. And so Swamiji had it in the room. And someone who was cleaning the room saw it, oh, outside is the Hindu, inside is the Christian, there's something wrong going on. You can imagine the type of stuff that used to come out of that. All these people who have stood for truthfulness, non-violentness, it's sort of, we start to wonder, do we want to go that path? At times the question comes. But again, the question comes, we have to be what we are to be. Hmm? It's not about trying to be someone else. It's about we being ourselves. When we talk about non-violentness, truthfulness, we are talking about states of being where even the idea of being false doesn't exist. Even the idea of being violent doesn't exist. Now, I'm talking of something which may be a bit utopian for now. So let it be utopian, nothing wrong with utopia. Greek philosophers also had that idea, nothing wrong with it. At least if you aim for the stars, you get off the ground, okay? Aim for the stars, you get off the ground. Most people, they're not even aiming for getting off the ground in the first place. So at least, aim for something higher. Ahimsa and Satya. When Patanjali talks about this, he comes to a very interesting verse. And that is in 35 and 36 of the Sadhana Pada. 35 and 36. And I'm going to take the help of where is share screen, and okay, now we want this one. We were in this. Yeah, I'm going to come back to that in a few moments, but I don't want the other one. Yes, this one. Right. This is still the kleshas here. I have sent you this whole part, so all of this is there. Okay, still not yet come there. Okay. Yeah, this is what I was looking for. So this is the 35th. And Patanjali tells us that with each of the yama, he says, when you are able to get into that yama becoming you, you have become that yama, you have attained that state of being. He says there is a certain siddhi, a certain accomplishment that manifests. And when he talks about ahimsa, he uses the term ahimsa pratishtayam tat sannidau vairatyagaha, which is translated as violence ceases to exist in our presence once we stabilize ourselves in non-violentness. The key word here is pratishta. There is a term that he uses, pratishta, which is down here. Now this pratishta is a very special term because it means to be established firmly in a very reverential manner. In India, when we are putting a temple and an idol in the temple, when that idol is consecrated in the temple, we say pratishta. So a linga, for example, a Shiva linga is put in the temple, it is called linga pratishta. So pratishta means to establish firmly in a sacred manner, not just established, but in a very sacred manner with a very higher aspiration. The aspiration is of the higher nature. And that is why what is very clear here is Patanjali doesn't use the words lightly. Saying that the yama niyama sadhana needs to always keep in mind the higher purpose. Because the asuras, the demons, they have done great tapasya. They wanted boons that would satisfy their selfish desires. So our sadhana must not be of an asura nature, but rather of a divine nature. This is the attitude that enables us to attain the ideal, becoming ourselves in the process an idol fit for worship. That is why the ancient rishis, they have said, to worship God, become a god. This is why Maharishi Patanjali uses the term pratishta. He reminds us to remember the purpose of sadhana even when we obtain the siddhi. It is a very interesting concept, this ahimsa pratishta. What does he mean? He says, when we are firmly established in ahimsa, violence gives itself up on its own accord. You have become non-violence. It is like you have become the light. The darkness will go away on its own. The darkness ceases on its own. The light doesn't have to go and chase the darkness away. It is so important here that we keep this in mind. We don't have to kill violence. People think they have to kill violence. Imagine the violence of killing violence. That is why a war will never bring peace. No war in human history has ever brought peace, because violence will beget violence. Violence cannot bring about peace. It is not possible. And that is why the violence, the manifest violence, is the consequence of unmanifest violence. So if we radiate non-violence, violence cannot manifest in our presence. And that is why we have to do some introspection. When we find that we are in a world with violence all around us, what is our role in this scenario? And we have to be very careful, because each one of us is contributing to it. When we focus on violence, we are contributing to violence. When we focus on violence, we are contributing to violence, which is why when Mother Teresa was asked, will you join us for an anti-war demonstration? She said, no. They said, you are such a peace-loving person, we thought you would say yes. She said, I will not join an anti-war demonstration, but if it is a pro-peace demonstration, I will join you. Very big difference is there. Because anti-war is already violence. Is it pro-peace? I think we need to really rethink the way we have approached the concept of violence in humanity. It is said that the hermitages of the great rishis, they bore witness to this, that even natural enemies, tigers and deer, would live together. Because that ashrama, that hermitage, had the whole feeling of non-violentness. The non-violentness was there. And that is why Patanjali says, even violence renounces itself. Vairat tyagaha. Tyaga means to renounce. Even that violence will renounce itself in the face of one who is perfect in non-violentness. When you become non-violentness personified, when you become the personification of non-violence, even violence cannot exist around you. You have become the light. How can darkness exist around you? We need to rethink our approach, because we always think of ahimsa and we define ahimsa as non-violence. So we have brought violence into it. And this is why when we define health, if we say health is the absence of disease, you have already brought disease into the definition of health. I think we have to reframe how these things are coming, that even the concept of violence doesn't exist. It's not about saying, oh, I'll have a violent thought and I'm going to negate it. That happens initially. That is our kindergarten journey in the Yama Niyama. That we have a violent thought, we negate it. We have a violent word, we try to set it right. We have a violent action, we try to set it right. This is why Pratipaksha Bhavanam, Patanjali has talked about violence as the first of the Vitarkas, and how you have to understand it deeply. In fact, the other day, I got a question. I got a question from one of our participants, and I'm just seeing she's logged in, but I don't see her video. Dr. Lalita. And Dr. Lalita asked me a very, very beautiful question. after many years, I've had a very good question like that, Lalita. And her question was, we had talked about the Vitarkas and we had talked about how violence, which is a Vitarka, Kritakarita Anumodita. And she had said, one is violence can be directly done, or you can have somebody do it on your behalf, or the third Anumodita, which means that you allow the violence to be there. And that all three are a Vitarka. So she took this third part, Anumodita. And then she took another part of Patanjali's teachings. And that part of Patanjali's teachings is the fourfold attitudes, Maitri Karuna Mudito Pekshanam. And in that, Patanjali has told us that if we want to have clarity of the mind, you have friendliness towards those who are at ease with themselves, have compassion for those who are suffering, have friendliness towards those who are being noble and virtuous, and have indifference towards those who are being non-virtuous. So the question that Lalita asked me was that on one side, Patanjali is saying, when there is the non-virtual, he says, be indifferent. But here he is saying, by allowing violence to be there, you are equally guilty of it. How do these two come together? And seriously, ever since she asked me this question, I think I saw this on Saturday, and today is Thursday. I have spent the last 5 days thinking about this deeply. And that's why I wanted to mention your name specifically, Lalita, because this is the dharma of a student, is to bring up questions that then make the teacher look for answers. And often we have questions, and I'm a person who often gives an answer straight away. And as Jnana Sundari likes to put it, she says, you ask Dr. Ananda any question, you will get an answer for sure. And what type of answer it will be, you never know, but you will get an answer for sure, because that is how I look at life. And it's taken me 5 days. I've been thinking about it. Still, I'm not 100% sure of my answer, but I'm going to try something. Let us think of it this way, because this is very much related to the violence concept, is still part of this. The Vitarkas are the key if we are to deal with Yama Niyama, because the Vitarkas are the deviants that are pushing us off the balance. Let us look at these two. Upekshanam is indifference towards, for simplicity, I'm using the word evil, but unvirtuous, ignoble. Upekshanam is indifference, whereas Anumodita in this context is to allow the Vitarka to manifest. When talking about the Yama Niyama, Patanjali is telling us that the Vitarkas are arising from within us. The Vitarkas are not external enemies. The Vitarkas are arising within us, and they are pulling us or pushing us off our balance. So when you have violence as something that you are doing, having somebody do, or allowing someone to do, this Vitarka from inside is pushing you away from the concept of ahimsa. Hence, you cannot allow the violence to be of any form, either you manifesting, someone manifesting on your behalf, or it being allowed in your presence. So basically, Patanjali is implying a proactive role for the individual in reducing violence of any form. It is a proactive. Definitely there's proactive messages being given by Patanjali in this context. You are not to just let violence manifest. And here he's used the word violence. We're talking about it in this context. It's all the Vitarkas. So you take any of the 5 Yama, any of the Niyama, look at the opposite, and we are talking the same thing. Be proactive in reducing, mitigating, attenuating violence of all forms. Thought, word, and deed, either direct, indirect, or in your presence. Whereas Upekshanam said, if you find people who are people, event, things, circumstances that are evil, negative, keep a gap. Now, keep a gap doesn't mean don't act. And I think this is where the answer lies to Lalita's question. Because we think keep a gap means do nothing. Keep a gap actually is a very active one where you are acting without attachment. The upekshanam here is that you are diffusing the violence without attaching to the violence. Now, what happens in trying to stop violence, we may become violent. And we start to attach to the violence by saying that person is violent and I'm going to shut them down because they're violent. So the upekshanam here is without getting attached to that violence, with a vairagya-based attitude where you are keeping a safe distance, but you are dealing with it. I will give you a simple example. It's tough to give examples with human beings because we are so complicated. That is why Aesop fables, Jataka tales, Hitopadesha, all of these, they took animal stories because it's easier to learn from those examples and then we apply it to humans. Because if you talk of humans, people immediately, I'm human, they get offended. And they're not human, that's why they get offended. That's a different issue. Coming back. Imagine you find two animals who are fighting each other. Okay? There are two animals fighting each other. Two dogs are fighting each other. A dog and a cat are fighting. Now, according to this concept of Anumodita, you cannot allow violence in your presence. So you have to stop the cat and dog fighting. I'm being very simplistic here. Forgive me for being very simplistic, but it's easier to understand it that way. Cat and dog fighting is violence. In your presence, you want to separate them from fighting. You got the idea? You are separating them. That is, you are preventing the anumodita, that violence, from occurring in your presence. Now, in doing this, there are different ways you can do it. One is you start taking a stick and beating both of them. Now, what has happened? In order to prevent their violence, you have become violent. This is a very, very dangerous thing because you have become violent, which means now you have actually got involved in that violence. How can you manifest upekshanam? Well, you find two biscuits, throw one biscuit to one corner for the dog, throw another biscuit to the other corner for the cat. Both of them start eating the biscuit. Both of them stop fighting. You have not got attached or interfered in the fight. On one side, you have taken care of the violence coming down by feeding both of them. Why were they fighting? They were both hungry. So what have you done? You have brought the violence down without you getting attached to it. You have maintained a safe distance by not getting involved, because if you take a stick and go in, both of them will start to bite you. That is why Patanjali said, don't involve into it. You have kept a safe distance. I'll give you another example. Now this becomes a bit more difficult when it's your kid and the neighbor's kid fighting. Okay, it becomes more complicated. I leave. You can find the solution for that. Biscuits are usually good. Cakes are the other option. Or if they have a mobile phone, give them each a mobile phone and put them in different rooms. Seriously, this is what's happening these days. Coming back to it, another story which goes in tune with this. And thank you, Lalita, for asking this question, because it's really made me try to approach it. I'm still working on a complete answer. This is only a temporary stopgap answer coming together. There is a beautiful story of the sage, the rishi, the saint, the rishi, whatever cultural ethos it is. And Amma talked about it this other day in her satsanga with Divya. And I really so happy with what Divya did, because she could get Amma onto that satsanga. Amma talked about this, that a saint saw a scorpion drowning in the water. And so what this saint did was he saved that scorpion, and the scorpion bit him. So then his friend asked him, he said, you know that scorpion is biting you, still you are saving it. And the saint said, it is the nature of the scorpion to sting, but it is my nature to help. This is the common story. Ammaji also told it the other day. Now, I like to take this a step further in this context. What I like to say is, it was good of the sage to try to help the scorpion. The scorpion was struggling, no doubt, but having the knowledge of the nature of the scorpion, you have to have enough of upekshanam. Okay, upekshanam is you have a stick. Don't use your hands to catch that scorpion. So this is where the violence that is happening. A scorpion is drowning in the water. It is violence. You cannot say, oh, it is not my business. That is what Patanjali says here. He says, Anumodita, if there's violence happening, you cannot say it's not my business because you are present there. You are part of the bigger picture. But the upekshanam attitude is, instead of putting your hand and getting bitten by the scorpion, you use a stick to help that scorpion out of the water onto the land. That is the other key he has given, which is upekshanam. Keeping a safe distance from people who can potentially sting you. And this is where you need to be able to help people without allowing them to harm you. So the message here is you have to bring both of them into it. The upekshanam part is where you have to keep that safe distance with a stick or a nice pair of thick gloves, so that you can help the person. You are mitigating the violence without allowing it to influence your mental clarity. Because the moment you get involved in it, you lose your cool. Which is why Patanjali has given us the Maitri Karuna Mudita Upekshana. So just this was a good question, and that is why I have tried to think about that. And Paula is talking about Swami Veda Bharati, telling a story of stopping a fight with a smile. Definitely good, yes. And again, what Shobhana says is very, very interesting, that animals is the nature to fight. I was just using it because if I start saying your kid and the neighbor's kid, you know, it starts to get too personalized. So it's better to talk of cats and dogs. But yes, animals could do it. I have no issues with animals fighting. That's their business. But if they fight inside my house and, you know, disturb, you know, me and disturb people who are with me and are a threat, I need to stop it. I saw a question about, yes, also with children fighting. I think children really teach us a lot, no doubt about that. And again, as Laura said, you don't need to have a violent or negative emotion in it. And Mark, yes, a peace-loving martial artist. Yes, very true, very true. I think the martial arts, in fact, the greatest part of the martial arts is to be able to not fight. You have the skill, and then you actually choose not to fight. It is that immense inner control that comes. That is where the mastery of the energy itself comes. And I feel that the martial arts have been portrayed again as something that is violence externally. And so they are considered violence, but they are actually a means for one to understand the external violence, go in, and it starts to become a meditative, contemplative awareness of what is the root of that violence. And you actually go to a place that is like an ahimsa place ultimately. So I feel that the martial arts, when practiced with mindfulness, consciousness, energy, that is what they are, and not mindlessly. It's like basically the acrobatic yoga circus. The same thing has happened with the martial arts. They all came from a similar culture, a culture that understood how to work with energy, and that working with this energy how you could actually deal so much. Priya has asked also a question about Karna. This is a character in the Mahabharata who, because he has been benefited by the Kauravas, decides to fight and die on their side. That is where Karna becomes the tragic hero, because he was not able to have an upekshanam there. And it becomes very difficult. Gurlin is talking about upeksha and pratipaksha bhavana. I would say yes, both can come together there. Because the ability to defend, as Aishwarya says, ability to defend oneself also gives safety. So again, ahimsa is not to be a doormat. You are not meant to be a non-violent doormat that everybody stamps on. That is not ahimsa. That is the greatest violence. And that is why the violence is not just the violence you perpetrate on others, but what you allow others to put on you. Allowing others to be violent to you is actually what that anumodita is more about. And if you understand that anumodita is allowing people to be violent to you, upekshanam is keeping space so that they cannot be violent to you. You start to find that those two actually come together when you understand anumodita as don't allow people to be violent to you, keep a space and there's no violence. But if you know they're going to be violent and you are standing in front of them, you are going to get punched in your face. And that is that is where the viveka comes in, the choice not to be in certain places at certain times. It is like, so many of my school and college reunions, I consciously avoid, because I know what will happen there. People will get down to the lowest common denominator and become a mess of subhuman nature. And I don't want to be part of that. So I'm happy to go and say hello, namaste, how are you? Have a few hugs and say hi, and then get out of there before they start to descend to the lowest level of subhuman behavior, which happens when people get into herds. All the intelligence goes out. So coming back, similar to this, Patanjali has talked about ahimsa. So when he says in ahimsa, he has told us that the violence ceases in your presence. He then goes on to tell us that when satya is manifesting in you, you become truthfulness embodied. He says the fruit of our action comes true when we are established in truthfulness. That whatever you think, whatever you say, whatever you do starts to become the reality. And this is something that people have always thought about with the great yogis, that the great yogis would say it's going to rain and it would rain. They would say it's going to sunshine and there will be sunshine. They'll say there's a storm and there will be a storm. They'll say this person will not die, they won't die. This person will die, they will die. And so people said, oh, these yogis have siddhis. And people got scared of the yogis and the rishis, because whatever they would say would come true. And so people say, this is the power I want, because then I can tell my neighbor to die. Seriously, I tell you why people want these powers. Many years ago, someone contacted me and they also contacted Dr. John Mumford. For those who don't know Dr. John is a lovely human being. He lives in Sydney, and he is the one who's put me onto the path of Yantra and given me so much of love to find out parts of my father which I would not have known otherwise. And again, someone who has been such a benevolent mentor. And so this person had contacted Dr. John because Dr. John has written some books on Kundalini and Siddhis and a lot of funny things. So this person contacted Dr. John and he said, I want you to teach me how to get all these Siddhis, like flying in the air, walking on water and all of that. So Dr. John, I think, just put the phone down on him or something like that. So this person then gave me a call, and middle of the night, not realizing that time zones are different in different parts of the world, gave me a call and it's like, Dr. Ananda, you must teach me how to get all these siddhis. I want to walk on water and fly in the air and all of this, and you must do it for me. I'm like, first of all, I have no idea who you are. I have no idea anything, and you just phone me and say you want me to teach you how to get the siddhis. He says, yes, I asked Dr. John and he hung up on me, and you are going to do it now for me. And I'm like, I said, I don't have any siddhis. So if I don't have them, how am I going to teach you how to get them? And he's like, yeah, all of you are so selfish. None of you want to teach me. You want to hide it all. And I don't have siddhis. I don't know how to get siddhis. I don't have them, and I don't claim to have them. So how am I going to teach you something I don't know? No, this, that. So I said, okay, I'm just interested to know, why do you want to have these siddhis? Why do you want to walk on water? Why do you want to fly in the air? And he said, because nobody in my friends and family circle believes me that this can be done. And I want to do it and show them that I am right and they are wrong. And I'm like, that's just such a load of ego there, that you want the siddhi not for the sake of the siddhi, not to help people, but to go and prove one upmanship on somebody else. And it is just totally wrong. I don't see any reason it should be there. No, you are being egotistical. You don't want to teach me what you know. I'm like, I teach everybody what I know, and I don't know much, but whatever I know, I share. And I definitely don't know anything about siddhis, okay? And he got so mad at me, 45 minutes in the middle of the night. You will say, Dr. Ananda, you should have followed Dr. John and hung up in the first place. That would have been actually Anumodita and Upekshanam. But being a nice guy, I often listen to people. That's why nowadays, if it's an unknown number, I don't even take the phone these days. Nowadays, sort of most of the time, it's missed calls. Why do we want these siddhis? Why do you want to have this siddhi that whatever I say will come true, so that you can go around cursing people? That's not the purpose of it. The purpose is so that you understand reality. Sat is reality. The concept is, when you are one with that reality, you are not going to say anything that is not true. It's as simple as that. It's not that whatever you say will come true. You will not say that which is not true. And so everybody who doesn't know about it, they think, oh, he said it's going to rain and it rained. The reality is it is going to rain, and hence you said it's going to rain. Because you have become one with the reality. It is not that you say it and influence it. We always think that we are going to influence something else. The siddhi of becoming one with Satya is where you realize what is the reality. And you will only think, say, and do that which is connected to it. And so naturally, whatever you say, think, and do comes true, because that is what you have become. You have become truth incarnate. Not that your ego comes in and tries to twist the story. It is not an egotistical idea here. And that is why we have to be very careful, because depending on the proximity to it, we start to follow the truthfulness with fidelity. And we become so established in reality that whatever we think, say, or do comes true. This is the natural scheme of things. Things do not come true because we said so, but they come true because we are established in that truthful state that has aligned itself with the karma and the dharma laws. We have become one with karma and dharma. There's no separation, and you heard my dogs there. Huh? Somebody rang the bell, and so they think we are under attack. That's that old survival instinct. Bell rang, enemy has come. And most probably it is somebody with my iron clothes or something. It will be the most innocuous. Actually, Ammaji has come, so I don't know why they are barking at her today. And that's weird. It's weird when they bark at me. See, Patanjali's teachings, the beauty of Patanjali's teachings are, he does not promise special powers. What he is actually saying is that you are aligning yourself with the universe. When you follow Ahimsa and Satya, when you live Ahimsa and Satya, when you become Ahimsa and Satya, you are in tune with the universe. There's no duality. It is a stage of non-dual oneness, wholesomeness. At that point, the universe is not violent. So where is violence? The universe is not untruth. So then where is the untruth? They disappear. Because you become light. If you become light, where is the darkness? There's no darkness. And this is the beauty of these teachings, that these are teachings that are not promising you something external. People have thought that these are something being promised externally. These are not external powers to be misused. I was once asked by a student, because one thing that is very common in India, it's common in many cultures, but in India it is more common, is people get into fits of anger, rage actually, and they start cursing everybody. It's a common occurrence. They get into a fit of rage and they're like, you're going to die, your family is going to die, and this is going to happen, and that's going to happen. And they do this type of stuff. People go on to those ranty, emotional rage moments. And this happened with one of my young students. And he asked me, he said, the other day I was there and this person came up to me and started cursing me, and do curses come true? That was his question. His question was, she has cursed me, will those curses come true? My answer was, for somebody's curses to come true, they have to have a certain level of spiritual attainment. They have to be established in a certain level of satya for the curse to come true. And if somebody is established in that satya, they will not curse. So basically it means, don't waste your time worrying about people cursing you. That is their business. Because we are very scared, because here, even yesterday I had a mother phone me in panic attack that someone had cursed her saying your son is going to die and this, that. Imagine telling a mother your son is going to die and blah, blah. What type of devils incarnate say these things? And this is going, and she's like, Doctor sir, say my son, say me. This is the phone call I got as I was driving back from the hospital yesterday. And I'm like, what's happened? And it was a number that I had not saved, so I didn't know it is her. Then I realized, oh God, say my son. And I'm like, what's happened? Are you in an accident? This person has cursed me. This person has said my son's going to die. My son will be separated from you. He will not go to yoga classes at Yoga Chali Natyalayam. This is going to happen. That's going to happen. And this person has cursed me. Oh my God, save me. I'm like, why are you even worried about it? No, that person said it. I said, that person's an idiot. That person's an idiot who has no brains and has said something that has no base in reality. No, but what if that person has some supernatural powers? I said, no, that person has no power. That person is a total fake. But this person has a long beard and he wears orange and he comes and sits in the madam. He's basically just trying to, manipulate weak minds, and has got into this. And people get scared because we don't know, will it come true? Because in our culture, Indian culture, we have stories of, sages cursing different people. But each time that sage cursed somebody, you know what happened? They lost all the power. And they had to go back and do the yoga sadhana again. And so the sage cursing was actually a step back in their own spiritual development. And that is why as they developed further, they stopped cursing. It is only at the lower level that you are like, I have this power, I'm going to misuse it. After some time, you realize with power comes responsibility. With greater power comes greater responsibility. And with the highest power comes the highest responsibility. That is why when you want Kaivalya, you have to be ready for that responsibility of that power of being one with the cosmos. Not like Bruce Almighty trying to misuse it, to have the wind come and blow up the skirt of a girl on the street. Jim Carrey and Bruce Almighty. That scene came up the other day on my Facebook page. And then he goes up and he wants to shoot lightning at everybody. Until he realizes being God is not easy. One of those beautiful movies worth watching, Bruce Almighty, one of my all-time favorites, just for the sake of realizing being God is not easy. And I love the point where he stands in the middle of the street and gets run over by the truck. And he asks God. Another thing I loved is God being black. I think the best would have been if they had opera playing goddess. Huh? That would have been that would have been the most amazing part of that movie would have been if they had a black woman playing God. That would have just been, my father would have been so happy with that. Huh? My father would have just loved that. Huh? He gets run over and he says, you didn't do anything to save me. And God is like, for, heaven's sake, you could have been off the street. Why were you in the middle of the road? The least you could have been doing is be off the road when that lorry is coming towards you. But we want God to save us. I tell you, with great power comes great responsibility. This is not just externally, internally. As you start to realize where you are, violence ceases. You start to realize that your presence is so important. So many lives I have seen changed by the presence of good people, noble people. Can you be that noble being that your presence in somebody's life brings about a positive change in their life? Your presence should be the present you give them. I think the best compliments I have received have been when people have said, Ananda is the therapy man. He is the therapy. He doesn't even have to give the therapy. I think that is the best compliment I can have as a therapist, as a yoga therapist, is where just your presence in their life is the therapy they need. Not the asana, which asana you give them, which pranayama, that is secondary. Can you have that presence of satya, the presence of ahimsa, that presence of all of these, so important that we become the living embodiment of these teachings. So important, rather than be the opposite, where we get into people's lives and make a mess of it. People have a wonderful life and we come into it and we make a mess of it. That's the opposite of it. Can we be a positive influence in other people's lives? Can we be a positive presence in our life for the first case? Can we have that sense of being ourselves? That is what the yama niyama are. Ahimsa and satya. And seriously, I thought I'm going to get through all the yamas today. Huh? I always anticipate what I can do in a class. Huh? These are just so deep, I tell you seriously. People think, oh, ahimsa, okay, non-violence, satya, speak the truth. Let's go on to the next one. Huh? Seriously, I tell you, when you go into these are the bottom levels of living consciously. And speaking of cats, Kalavati's cat is visiting us. What we need to do is dig deep, dig deep, dig deep. That is why Patanjali says, Eka Tattva Abhyasa. You take one principle and go deep in that. That is more than enough. Just one principle. Gandhi took ahimsa and satya in his life. For me in modern times, I remember going down to South Africa and being at Robben Island, where Nelson Mandela, who to me, next to Gandhi, I place him in a very high place in my estimation, spent 18 of his 27 years in jail. One full 27. Those who did the yantra with me, you know that. One full 27 he spent in jail. Nelson Mandela spent 18 years on Robben Island in a small cell. And you can go there now and see that cell, and you go in there and I tell you, two places where I have had this feeling of utter hopelessness. One was there. It was like, seriously, I'm like, seriously, how could a human being spend 18 years in this cell, still come out without a thought for revenge? Come out with a thought of peace, come out with a thought of sharing, come out with a thought of change and transformation. No wonder I consider him so high with Gandhi, because how you could come out, especially after I went to that cell, 18 years in that, you would come out wanting to shoot every person you saw outside. And that was the peace he had found within himself. The second place I had that helplessness hopelessness, that total feeling of, I don't know, dread was in Berlin. And Jnana Sundari was with me. My first trip to Berlin, where we went to that artistic thing where they have the labyrinth, which is a symbol of the Holocaust, and you go into that and they have all these cement blocks of different sizes, and it's over a huge area. And seriously, you walk through that and you come out and you are like, I tell you, you cannot describe the feeling. This is where art can actually give you an experience. These two places, one was that labyrinth and second was the Mandela cell on Robben Island. And you just realize from those depths of despair, what can be created? From the depths of despair. Think of Japan, totally bombed, destroyed, and how it came up. And even today, how it has come up. These are stories that we need to tell. These are the stories we need to understand, that from those depths of despair, you find those components of yourself that you need to rebuild yourself and become the person that you are to be. That is the process. The Yama Niyama are the process by which we are finding those depths. We are finding those depths, and from those depths we come up. Because in those depths, if you have been there, if you have been to hell, you can help other people when they are in hell. And that is why every experience in our life, that is what the Pratipaksha Bhavanam is. Every negative experience, can you learn from it so that you become a better you and you can help others who are going through that similar experience. Then your life is really being lived as it should be. L-I-V-E-D. This is where the Yama Niyama come in. They are not just something to be memorized for an exam, to be written in the term semester paper. That is the biggest issue I have with the way yoga has gone into academics. Is again, people know all these terms, they know all of this, but where is the life in it? And that is why the direct connection to a living teacher is so important, so important, so important, even if it is online through the computer. When we could go deep into ourselves, we find that strength, that power of choice, that Pratipaksha Bhavanam. And often I have told, so many of my students know these stories, but if you have a negative experience someplace, go back and create a positive or at least a neutral experience in that place. If you have a negative experience with a person, can you create a positive, if not at least a neutral experience there, to negate you holding on to that negative baggage? You are doing it for yourself, to let go of the negative baggage that is holding you back. This is where the letting go comes. The aparigraha comes in. We'll continue on that tomorrow. Asteya, aparigraha and samacharya. We will get through the yamas this week. I tell you, the ability to let go. Whenever I've had negative experiences in places, I've tried to go back and create another experience so that I don't hold on to the negativity. You should not hold on to the negativity with anybody, because that negativity doesn't affect them, it affects you. That is why the Buddha's statement, if somebody gives you a gift and you don't accept it, who does it belong to? The person who gave it. So somebody gives you a curse, you don't accept it, who does it belong to? Same thing. Somebody gives you negativity, you don't accept it, who does it belong to? Whereas the other statement, again attributed to Buddha. Even yesterday, I thought of creating a new Buddha statement saying, everything on the net is not real, the Buddha. Huh? Because nowadays, anything they put on the net, they put Buddha, they put, it's sort of this crazy thing that poor Buddha, you say, I never said that, you guys. Everything we put it. But he said some amazing things. Buddha, Patanjali, all these grand masters, Christ, Oh, yeah, amazing, amazing masters who have seen reality. They have perceived reality, lived the reality, and misunderstood by people around them. It's easy 2000 years later to think, oh, everybody loved Buddha. No, he had a lot of people who threw stones at him. Definitely, you don't throw stones at people you like. He had that struggle. Everybody's had that struggle. So when we know that they struggled, we can understand our struggle better. That is why the struggle. But Buddha is said to have given a statement, which is that you having these negative emotions, what is it? It is like you holding on to a burning fire in your hand. Your negative emotions is like you holding to a burning fire and holding and hoping somebody else will get burned by it. Nobody's going to get burned by it. You are going to burn yourself. Negative emotions harm you, not somebody else. Cursing somebody doesn't influence them negatively. It influences you because you have brought yourself down. You have brought yourself to the depths of the subhuman nature. This is where the yama niyama are those evolutionary jets. They are your, when you go swimming and you don't know how to swim, you have your safety things you wear around you, especially kids wear them. The kids used to have these things around the arms, so you jump in and you stay afloat. Your flotation devices. Your flotation devices that are under the seat of your flight, your plane. On the aeroplane, your flotation device is under your seat. The flotation devices on either side, the yama niyama, to keep you afloat so that you don't sink into the bottom and get eaten up by all those sharks and giant mushrooms that hide down there. Dr. Ananda's nightmares. A giant shark-like mushroom. You see what my subconscious does to me? The Loch Ness monsters that are down there. The subconscious, unconscious is like that. The yama niyama are our flotation devices. Make sure they have adequate amount of air in them. Don't puncture them. Don't let other people puncture them. Because others would love you to sink down and be eaten by the shark because they are also being eaten by the shark. Let's get eaten by the shark together. And you love me, so we must both be eaten by the shark together. That's not love. I am suffering, so you must suffer with me if you love me. Come on, that's not love. That is the most negative, emotional blackmail that is there. The most emotional negative blackmail is, I am suffering, come and suffer with me. The answer is, I am suffering, help me get out of the suffering on my own. Be my raft, be my flotation device, be my stone, be my brick, be my ladder. Help me come out of it. I will come out of it. You just be there for me. If you are there with me, I can come out of it. That is the influence we should have. Not you come and sink with me. If you love me so much, sink with me. Come on, no. We have to be very careful because the way we are manipulated by the emotions. Remember that all the emotions are subcortical. The cortical part is where you can rationalize it and you can come out of it. That is why the yama niyama pratipaksha bhavanam is all about this. And I'm going to leave you there for today. We are going to come back tomorrow with renewed vigor. Renewed vigor about this because these are just such important tools for living as a human being. And if we don't live as a human being, well, this whole incarnation is not going to be worth it. And why waste an incarnation when you have a chance to make sure it is not wasted? Okay? We have this incarnation. Let's make the most of it. Let's be the best we that we can be. Om Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu Sarve Janaha Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. And yes, it is Saturday, not tomorrow. What I meant by tomorrow was next class, basically. But it will be definitely Saturday. And have a wonderful time. Let all these concepts get into you, go deep into you, and we'll come back with more stuff. Namaste.